Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday. Last week we had to switch things around, technical problems, but we're back rolling here in Cleveland, Ohio, with a brother, a mentor, and a friend of me, Peter Ray, the American Sports History Podcast. He's in Cleveland. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing this 2,500 miles to the west in Los Angeles. 347-205-9631 if you happen to miss it. Catch the archive version, blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports podcast platforms, wherever you subscribe to podcasts, powered now by Mancini Media. So without further ado, more of him, less of me. Let me lay the red carpet down, put the podium in place, hand off the mic, the threes, Peter. How are you? How can people get a hold of you? And man, oh man, you're bringing your other sidekick, not too far from you in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Matthew DiBiase. I'll let you take it away. I'll man the boards, and God bless the both of you. I love you dearly.
Love you, Mark.
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. REA. You're absolutely right. Tonight's guest has written 4 tremendous sports history books: Bench Bosses, the NHL's Coaching Elite 2015, The Art of the Dealers, the NHL's Greatest General Managers 2017, Lords of the Gridiron, College Football's Greatest Coaches 2019, and the book we're going to continue talking about tonight, Lords of the Gridiron 2, Pro Football's Greatest Coaches 2022. He's got coming out in 2026, Baseball's Greatest Managers and the NBA's Greatest Coaches. Tonight, every 4 weeks, we have a wonderful talk about NFL history. Welcome to the show, Mr. Matthew DiBiase.
Peter, Mark, it's always an honor and a pleasure to be on this show, and thank you for having me back. You don't know how much I enjoy this.
Oh, well, we enjoy it. It's wonderful. Yeah, and this is American sports history, and you've got this book, which is basically NFL history, and a lot of it stuff I didn't really know because, the NFL, especially 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Anyway, tonight we're going to talk about some modern fellas. Starting off with number 28 all time of your greatest coaches, Pete Carroll. What can you say about him?
Pete Carroll. The last of 3 men to have the rare honor of winning a College Division I-A national championship and a Super Bowl. The other 2, Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. Pete Carroll won a national championship, actually 2 national championships for USC in the early 2000s, and then he won the Super Bowl in 2013 for the Seattle Seahawks. The greatest coach in Seattle Seahawks history. He, according to my calculations, he was the second best coach in the NFL in the 2010s behind Bill Belichick and ahead of Mike McCarthy and Andy Reid. And according to my calculations, as shown in my 3rd book, Lords of the Gridiron, College Football's Greatest Coaches, if you update it to today, reflecting today's thing, because my college football book came out in 2019, if you update it today, he'd be ranked 16th greatest Division I-A college football coach of all time between Gilmore Dobie and Kirby Smart at Georgia there. I mean, just pure West Coast story. I mean, he was a California kid born in San Francisco in 1951. He was an avid athlete, but he never had the body for it. He was always small, slight. I mean, he was just 110 pounds when he entered high school, soaking wet and all that. But what he lacked in size, he made up for just sheer competitiveness and absolute enthusiasm. And he never got to play in a college football program. He was actually winning College of Marin and then University of Pacific there. He couldn't get drafted in the pros. He tried to play in the World Football League, be a board of World Football League, in the early 70s there. But he got injured in training camp, and that was the end of his playing career. So he went instantly into coaching, and he did this very long apprenticeship, doing in college at Pacific in Arkansas, Iowa State, Ohio State, North Carolina State, but also he was working on sports psychology, and that's one thing about Pete Carroll. It's not just so much X's and O's. He's very much about the mental aspect of the game, and he was very much like a New Age guru when you look at it. I mean, he came out with this book, Win Now, Win Forever, where he articulates his philosophies. Basically he's a bit of an eclectic. He got a lot, like from John Wooden. He inherited a lot from a guy named Abraham Maslow, because he has this thing called Maslow talk about hierarchy of needs, always about self-improvement, self-actualization, trying to help each person reach their peak experience, peak performance, basically reaching beyond yourself and always trying to maximize, your accomplishments, as it were. And combine that with his spirit of hyper-competitiveness. His idea was always take over a team, instill it with his philosophy, and make sure every player, was with him on page one all the way. And he did that at USC. I mean, when he took over at USC, and then he later brought that to the NFL when he took over at Seattle. But he did. In the beginning, he was just doing it conventionally. I mean, he was doing assistant coaching first in the college football, and then he worked under Bud Grant in the late '80s and the Minnesota Vikings, and later Jerry Burns. He was defensive oriented, coaching in the secondary and then coaching defenses and all that. And then in the early '90s, he had his first head coaching job with the New York Jets. First, he was like their defensive coordinator, and then he became the head coach. But he couldn't really get it together. The Jets really couldn't really accomplish that much, even though the players loved him. I mean, this one Jet who I interviewed, his name was Roger Duffy. He said, I know a lot of guys love to play for him because he's a high energy guy. He was always running around, when the offense was taking on the defense. I mean, competitive, enthusiastic. So he was always a catalytic presence. But he hadn't really articulated his philosophies yet, and the Jets didn't achieve as much, and he got fired. Then later on, when Bill Parcells left the New England Patriots to work with the Jets, it was Pete Carroll that took his place. And the thing was, he was hired by their owner, Robert Kraft, for the wrong reasons. Kraft was so disillusioned with Bill Parcells, he wanted someone completely opposite of Parcells, and basically he reached out to Carroll, and basically what he wanted to do is he wanted to get rid of the Parcells presence, and he later said that he respected Pete Carroll, but he said it was a mistake. And when you think about it, Pete Carroll was this California surfer blonde coaching in New England, which is basically the greater Boston area, which is a blue-collar, red-headed Irish town, and it wasn't going to work. And New England basically, again, was only one or two playoff appearances. They didn't do much, and finally Carroll got fired. And it was that period, that 1 year when he was basically sitting out, and because he still had a year to go in his contract, that's when he came up with his win for now philosophy. He put everything together, articulated the philosophy, and then when he got the USC head coaching job, that's when he unleashed it upon the college football world. And he totally turned that program around for 9 years, from 2001 to 2009. It's literally the last golden era of USC, because ever since then, despite what Lincoln Riley's doing now, what he's doing now, it does not compare to what Pete Carroll was doing. I mean, he literally restored the life and the light to the eyes of USC Trojans fans. I mean, he made that difference. He got the recruiting together. He was getting top-notch quality players. He was one of the first coaches to use Facebook as a recruiting tool. Used it to great advantage. He was getting, he was basically overloading on talent. Then he always emphasized, don't rest on your laurels, fight for your position. And he was able to foster that spirit of competitiveness. And guess what? I mean, he had, I forget how long the winning streak it was, like 32, 34 consecutive wins. It's still the USC record there. And they won 2 consecutive national championships in 2003 and 2004, and they would have won a third national championship in 2005, but they lost the BCS national championship game to Texas. And it was probably the greatest college football game of the 21st century. It was an epic battle. I mean, they lost 41-38 there. But he played out the string at USC, and then when he left, people wondered why he left, and then that's when USC was hit with that those sanctions from the NCAA for recruiting violations. That's the reason why Reggie Bush had to forfeit his Heisman Trophy. There were irregularities, and basically Pete Carroll was able to escape. He got his golden parachute when the Seattle Seahawks offered him a contract, and he took it, and he's never looked back. And I mean, he's been at Seattle ever since. And basically, when he took over, he just, again, installed his systems, and he just slowly but surely began rebuilding the team. And he got them to be winners again, playoff contenders, and then finally in the 2013 season, he took them all the way to the Super Bowl. It still remains Seattle's sole Super Bowl victory. And then he took them back again the following year, and that's when they lost New England, that controversial play call, on the 1 yard line. He throws that pass. I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, that's not the first time he kind of blew a call, in a key situation in that BCS national championship game against Texas. He decided to go for it on 4th and 1. He gave the ball to Lendale White, but he didn't have Reggie Bush in the same backfield. Everyone kind of knew he was going to get a run, and he fell short. And Texas got that ball and scored the game-winning touchdown, in response. So that's not the only time, Pete Carroll blew a key call that could have won him a championship. I mean, he threw that pass right straight down the middle, and it got picked off. I mean, if you had to throw a pass, why didn't he use a roll option? I mean, that's always been my little second guess there and all that. But he's still there today. I mean, Seattle still competes, but they haven't been to the Super Bowl yet.
Yeah, my notes in your book, in the chapter, you wrote, Pete Carroll's philosophy of balancing intense competitiveness and commitment with an undiminishing emotional positivism has catapulted him into becoming the greatest head coach in Seattle Seahawks franchise history and a seat in the pantheon of NFL's coaching elite. And then, you talked about, he winning titles in college and in the NFL. And his win forever philosophy, quote by Roger Duffy. I know a lot of guys love to play for him because he was a high energy. Now here's a quote by Pete Carroll. For years, I had ideas about coaching, always challenging the position groups, defensive squads, and teams that I coached to do things in an extraordinary way. If I ever coached again, I promised myself I was going to build an organization that could win forever. I would build it on the foundation of a single basic vision, where everything we did was centered on wanting to do things better than they had ever been done before. I wanted this basic competitive thought to be the foundation for everything. And then, let's see, you've got some other notes here. And so that was, Marshawn Lynch was really pounding the ball, and they showed Brady. He looked like, oh hell, we're going to lose the Super Bowl, and then he throws the pick, and then Brady's jumping up and down, and that's probably the toughest Super Bowl loss, because you're watching and thinking, because actually for the people like me, the Patriots haters, because they won so many Super Bowls, it was very painful because oh God, they're going to win again. So. Any more thoughts on Pete Carroll?
I'll tell you on that pass play, if you had to throw a pass, my pass play would have been this. I would have faked the plunge to Marshawn Lynch, do a roll option, then I would have had two receivers, one in the corner and one on the back line there. Look for the open man. If there's an open man, hit the open man. If neither one is open, can you run it in since they're on the one? And if not, throw the ball in the stands and reset the cycle. I mean, but that pass he actually threw it straight down the middle. And Butler wasn't the only one. I think there were like 2 or 3 other Patriots who were one step away from touching that ball. I mean, why did he throw it in that heavy traffic? That's the question that always bothers me with regards to that play. That's my final thought on Pete Carroll and all of that. But since then, he'd never been back to the Super Bowl. So there you go.
Well, the 2013 Seahawks, they were definitely a cool team, and they had the energy they had at their home field, and Pete Carroll, I can see his energy, which is really, you can see how important that is. Okay, let's move on to Tom Coughlin.
Talk about a polar opposite in personality. I mean, Tom Coughlin, oh man, so intense, almost kind of destructively intense. Very much an apostle of Bill Parcells, almost too much so. I mean, one of the reasons why Tom Coughlin is ranked among my top 50 is because the only coach ever to beat Bill Belichick twice in Super Bowl competition. Those 2 Super Bowl wins of his are the only reason why he made the top 50. If you took away those 2 wins, he would not have cracked the top 50 ranks according to my calculations. That's what saved him. That's probably he might get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's probably going to have to wait. Probably will wait till after he dies. But I think the fact that he coached the Giants, I think sooner or later, media and all that, he'll get in. You know, I mean, if Eli Manning's going to get in, I figure Coughlin will eventually get in. The fact that he's got 2 Super Bowl wins and he beat Belichick, yeah. But other than that, though, very uneven. A lot of peaks and valleys with Tom Coughlin, and he just. It's a very long story. He came out of New York State, born in Waterloo, New York. His father, Tom Coughlin has always been a stern disciplinarian. He inherited that from his father. His father was a very stern disciplinarian and all of that. And also when he played football as a youth, his youth coaches were very strict there too. So that's why Tom Coughlin was always a lord of discipline as a coach. He got that in his childhood, and it stuck with him. Now, he played football at Syracuse University from 65 to 67, where he was a teammate of Floyd Little and Larry Zonka, those great running backs, you know, who always wore the number 44. You know, it was passed down from Jim Brown to Ernie Davis to Floyd Little to Larry Zonka and so forth. And he was a wide receiver, but since Syracuse was always a running team, he wasn't much. He didn't catch a lot of passes, but he was a great blocker and all that. But in Floyd Little's memoirs, he paid Tom Coughlin the greatest tribute. He said Coughlin was like a coach on the field. In huddles, if a player had forgotten his assignment, Coughlin would always set the guy straight. No, this is what you're supposed to do. Take out this guy or do that thing. He knew not only his assignment, he knew everyone else's assignment. So Floyd Little said when he later became a coach, he said, didn't surprise me. And the fact he became a successful, great coach, again, didn't surprise him. He said he was like that as a player. He actually knew it all, forwards and backwards. And so he was valuable in that way. And he couldn't make it in the pros, so he just starts doing the assistant coaching, apprenticeship there. He was doing assistant coaching. He coached Doug Flutie. When Doug Flutie was setting all those records at Boston College, he was the quarterbacks coach there, and he got Doug Flutie's greatest work out of him. And it was actually Coughlin who advocated for Flutie because Flutie was always so small, and Boston College head coach Bill Flynn was kind of skeptical about it, but Coughlin said, no, give him a chance, he'll compensate. And sure enough, Doug Flutie was probably still the greatest quarterback in Boston College history there. And then finally, by the mid-1980s, he enters the NFL coaching ranks. Basically, he was a wide receivers coach. He worked for the Eagles when they were crappy under Marion Campbell. He was with the Green Bay Packers under Forrest Gregg, and it was a slow learning process. And finally, he came into his own when he worked with the Giants, and that's when he came under Parcells' influence there. And again, Parcells was such an enormous influence with him. Everything, using the pressure cooker, challenges, everything, how just keep the players intense, hungry and all that. Then he goes back. He finally gets his first head coaching gig at Boston College, and he's able to, not super spectacular, but one game, he's able to knock off top-ranked Notre Dame. It was one of the great upsets there, and then finally, he becomes the very first head coach in Jackson Jaguars franchise history. I mean, he was right there on the ground floor. He was the very first head coach. And amazingly, he gets them, his second or third season, he gets them into the playoffs, which I think is still an NFL record for the earliest playoff appearance by an expansion team. I remember watching that. He took them all the way to the AFC conference final, or NFC conference finals there. And it was amazing. I mean, but the thing was, he was so intense during that successful season where he took them to the AFC conference finals. He actually had to pull back a little bit. I mean, he was pushing a little too hard, and it was kind of wearing thin. Because in that season, they started off slow, and then finally when he eased off a bit, the team started getting fire, and they started getting hot, and they were able to get into a playoff slot, and they were able to go all the way to the AFC Conference Championship game. And again, he had to pull back. And he was also like the general manager, and after that high playoff appearance, they never really regained themselves. They never got as far as again. And finally, the team started tumbling, and he lost his job for a time. And then finally, the New York Giants took over, and they were looking for someone to basically crack the whip. They wanted someone to instill discipline, and boy, they got it when they put Coughlin in. And he's trying to turn the team around, and he gets Eli Manning, and basically that's where he rebuilds from. He gets Eli Manning, but it's still a slow, painful process. And, again, his intensity, he's so intense, it's kind of making the team wilt. I think, was it Rondé Barber actually retired from the Giants, and actually he dissed Tom Coughlin, saying he took all the fun out of the game and all that. That's why he quit the game and all that. It was kind of crazy. And finally, in 2007, they just basically eked their way into the playoffs, and then against all odds, and each round they keep pulling rabbits out of the hat, and they finally get into the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, who have this perfect record. You talk about David versus Goliath. Everyone expected the Patriots to emulate the 72 Miami Dolphins and close out with a perfect record there. And then, amazingly, and this is what killed me because I was rooting for the Patriots, in my opinion, what the Giants did in that Super Bowl in 2007 is the second greatest Super Bowl upset of all time after the Jets in Super Bowl III. Against all odds. They pull it off. That last drive by Eli Manning, it's one for the roses there. It'll live forever, that drive there. It irritated me no end, but just the fact that they pulled it off. That was the making of Eli Manning as a quarterback. He really grew on that drive there. If he gets in the Hall of Fame, it's because of that drive. And then the thing is, they win the Super Bowl, but the next couple of years they kind of drop off there. And they can't get it all back. And then in 2011, again, it's almost like history repeating itself. Again, they just barely eke out a playoff slot, and then round by round, again, they keep pulling rabbits out of a hat. And then finally, again, they're in the Super Bowl, and again against the Patriots, and again they're the underdogs, except not as much, but still. Again, against all odds, they contain the Patriots. They don't let Tom Brady go wild. The Giants' defense plays a superhuman effort, and again, it takes a last-minute drive by Eli Manning to pull a rabbit out of the hat and get that game-winning touchdown and all of that. But after that Super Bowl victory, again, he just can't sustain it. That was his thing. Coughlin could never sustain his success. There would always be drop-off. There would be subpar seasons. And that's why I got him ranked 29th. He doesn't rank higher there because he just couldn't maintain the high. There would always be this letdown. Kind of like Parcells, but in a much worse way. Parcells was superior because Parcells was a little bit better at getting more and out of his players than Coughlin was. Parcells kind of knew when to pull it back a little bit, but Coughlin never really knew how to pull it back. And it would really wear thin, and they would have these lows. And then finally the Giants got tired of him, and they fired him. And he actually had a shot at becoming the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, but he blew the situation. When his interviews with the owner, Bob Lurie, and the Eagles management, he kept talking about revenge. He wanted to get revenge against the Giants, and that really did not – the Eagles didn't like that. Lurie didn't like that. Roseman didn't like that, and Tom Coughlin, no, they let him go. They went with Doug Peterson instead, and finally Peterson led him to a Super Bowl victory. And now, you got Nick Sirianni. So Coughlin, he went back to management with Jacksonville, but it didn't work out, and he got let go by Jacksonville, and now he's in retirement, and the telephone isn't ringing, and he's just basically waiting, hoping to get a call notifying he's inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Now, from the chapter on Tom Coughlin, you quoted him. He said, quote, "I'm demanding because I know human nature well. If given the opportunity, the individual will take the easy way out. I'm trying to force people to be all they can and not accept rationalizations, crutches, and lame excuses that go along with failings to it." And then the quote by Coughlin about Eli Manning, "I've always admired Eli for his character and for the way he handles pressure. This young man is playing the marquee position in the city of New York with a famous and successful brother and father, yet manages to maintain his composure." And another quote by Eli Manning about Coughlin, after Coughlin got fired. Thank you, Coach, for being that role model to a young quarterback, and not only in allowing me to grow as a football player and as a man, but being that example and displaying those characteristics I wanted to emulate. At first, I just saw you as the head coach, but since then, you've been that and so much more to me and the rest of the guys on this football team. We'll miss you. And then, let's see. Now you have a quote here by something you wrote. Now it was up to Eli Manning, damned in the press and damned publicly even by his former teammate, Tiki Barber. Eli commenced one of the most dramatic, this is the Super Bowl, dramatic fourth-quarter drives in Super Bowl history that reaffirmed Tom Coughlin's faith in him while proving something to himself and the football world in the process. Now, the thing about, and there's this, I read his book called, I love the title, Earn the Right to Win. And then, and of course, what I thought it was fascinating how Eli Manning, you think, well, his brother's incredible, and then he ended up, I think they both have won 2 Super Bowls, but Eli was ahead at one point. And it was incredible. And then, that catch in the Super Bowl where the guy caught the ball on the top of his helmet, and one play where Eli Manning almost got sacked, long scramble. And then I've heard Tom Brady say that he would trade 2 Super Bowls for that one to win that year where they were perfect in the regular season, and so that was just an amazing thing that here they beat this team, a team undefeated into the fourth quarter. And so anyway, Tom Coughlin, interesting guy, and actually. Amazing what he did, and like you said, beating the Patriots. Now we got some comments here. Let's see here from from the callers. Chris from Daytona Beach. Pete Carroll is a legend in Seattle. Where is Forrest Gregg in your book?
No, not top 50. Definitely not top 50 according to my calculation. I don't have the chart with me, but not in the top 50. He's not featured in my pantheon. Sad to say. Nope.
Well, he was a tremendous. Well, he coached in Cleveland. I know he didn't do much here, but tremendous player for the Packers and Vince Lombardi. Jerry from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. Raymond Berry, I liked a lot with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, let's see. Forrest Gregg, I had him ranked 105th in my book back then. I don't know where he is now. If you updated it now, Berry, I got Raymond Berry ranked 87th in my pantheon. Now that was when the book came out in 2022. You would have to adjust it for the past season as well, and also this upcoming season here. But in that general area, in the high 80s, Raymond Berry. Yeah.
Darren from Camden, New Jersey, is talking about Roy Williams at Kansas and North Carolina. That must be a college coach, I presume.
Oh, yeah. When I do my college basketball book, Roy Williams will definitely be featured in my top 50. Oh, very highly rated. I won't give the game away, but don't worry. Very, very highly rated. Oh, better believe it. So just wait 6 years from now. Hopefully I'll still be alive and the world won't come to an end. And you'll read about Roy Williams in my book, Men in the Huddle, Part 2, College Basketball's Greatest Coaches. Just be patient, okay?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of sad about Coughlin that, he was really driven to succeed. It's sad what you wrote about near the end of how, if you want revenge, that there's something wrong with you, and that's not going to, so that's a sad thing that he hadn't gotten over. Of course, that is a tough thing, he'd won 2 Super Bowls, and you'd think they'd keep him, but, as you were saying, he can push guys too hard, and I guess that was they just get tired of the whole thing because these 2 guys are very different, Pete Carroll and Tom Coughlin. So anything else you want to say about Pete Carroll or Tom Coughlin?
In a sense, I mean, one of the reasons, because Belichick was a Parcells disciple, as was Coughlin, and all that. But the reason why Belichick succeeded for so long was he knew, he could be intense, but he also knew when to ease off and all that. He knew tension and release. He knew how to release it. Coughlin never really learned how to release it. At the right time. That's why Belichick was able to get that magnificent record as a coach. But sadly now, the fact that New England's dropping off, any hope of him ever regaining that top spot, which he occupied for a 2-year period, is being dashed. I think he's going to lose points, and I think he's going to be stuck in that 2 spot after Paul Brown, according to my calculations. It's not looking good. I'm beginning to wonder if it's time for him to step down and retire and all of that. I really wonder about that.
Our guest has been Mr. Matthew DiBiase, and we've been talking again about his tremendous NFL history book, Lords of the Gridiron 2, Pro Football's Greatest Coaches. Matthew, do you have any final words tonight for our audience?
Yes. Stay tuned for my podcast on Friday night where I'll be interviewing sports author Rick Schmetler. He's a great guest. He's written some lovely sports books there. I'll be podcasting. I'll be posting after 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my show, The Package Tourist, on the Anchor Network. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Matt, for another wonderful show, wonderful NFL history.
Thank you, Peter, and God bless you, man.
God bless you. We'll have 4 weeks from tonight. We'll have Matthew DiBiase back. We'll be talking about Hank Stram and who won a early Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Mike Ditka, of course, who won with the '85 Chicago Bears. Next week we'll have the coolest center fielder and leadoff hitter for the coolest NFL team, MLB team of all time, the Oakland A's from the early 1970s. And in 2 weeks we'll have Glenn Wilson, who played Major League Baseball from 1982 to 1993 with the Detroit Tigers, Philadelphia Phillies, Seattle Mariners, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Houston Astros. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks a million again, Mr. Matthew DiBiase.
God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you.